So I'm live with the leader of Surrey Heath Borough Council, Councillor Moira Gibson. Hello, Moira.
Hi.
So this is your regular Facebook live Q&A with residents. Hopefully residents from across the borough of Surrey Heath will be watching and asking you questions live. But what I wanted to do was just give you just at the beginning and an opportunity perhaps to tell residents what you've been up to and what's happening right now.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, one of the first things I've been doing in the last 2 weeks is obviously we had our annual council, and at that annual council I announced the members of who my executive was going to be, which is the sort of, it's like the cabinet. It's the people who take about 90% of the decisions in the council. And over the last 2 weeks, I've been talking with them and seeing what they wanted to do, where their interests lie, in order to restructure some of the portfolios, to add some other areas to the portfolios. Because I thought it's important. Often in the past, people have said, well, I quite like what's in that portfolio, so I'll take that, you know, could I have that portfolio? But some of the other things that may not actually be suited or may not have the skills to actually deal with. So what I was trying to do this time around was to actually try and match people's skills. And some people are very skilled at management. Some people are very skilled at quiet dealings and working with the community. Some people are very people persons and some people aren't, and nobody can be the same. And so what I've been trying to do is to try and match those skills as far as possible to the people involved. And so, for instance, I've divided up what was the old finance portfolio into finance and assets, because the councillor taking finance is an accountant. She's very skilled at adding up, I hope, and very skilled at, yeah, I would hope, financially. And she will be able to talk, if you like, the head of finances speak as an accountant. Whereas the person who had the old portfolio is going to take over assets, because that's really Richard's bag. As you know, he's been an estate agent, he's been involved in property development, he knows the business. Richard Brooks, he knows the business, he knows that he has a feel for what is happening out there with regard to property. And for a council that's beginning, you know, that is investing in property for income and investment, that's quite important to have a portfolio holder who is actually quite okay with that and actually knows what he's doing. And the others I've tried to sort of match the skills. Paul is going to take over, would you be surprised to hear, communications, social media, IT and marketing, and also the contact centre. So I think you could probably say those actually match his skills. And I've also introduced some new areas, because we have the old environment portfolio, which is going to be Viv Chapman's, but I've introduced some health issues and to be the sort of health champion, if you like, because we do have a health and wellbeing board, which she's on, and I think health is actually coming up the agenda. And borough councillors can't live in isolation. We can't say, well, because it's not actually our responsibility, we shouldn't be having some input into it, because I think we should do. And she's also going to do a highways liaison, so that's not trying to take over from county councillors or from the county council, but many times when people have problems on the road with the roads, or problems with potholes, for instance, dare I mention it, they sometimes don't know there's a difference between the borough councillor and the county councillor, and they often may talk to their local borough councillor, and Viv will be able to take some of these issues on board and pass them on. Okay. And as I say, I've sort of meddled around with some of them and given people special responsibilities which they didn't have before. Alan McClafferty, who's been driving the local plan, will also be taking over responsibility for the theatre, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the ideas that he might have to actually not close the theatre, but actually see how we can use it better and use it in more, to actually use that subsidy more. And he'll be, dare I say it, taking on responsibility for the Gypsy and Traveller, both looking after our present sites and within the local plan. And I know that some people are very worried about this. We having to look at what we do with regard to Gypsy and travellers, and I'm sure that will come up later.
I was going to say that is definitely going to. I've already had some questions in. That will definitely be coming up. So I think we ought to address that.
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
We will be addressing that.
Yeah.
So I think I've more or less I finished it. We had a portfolio holders meeting last night where we just fine-tuned it, so that should be going public today, and all councillors will be getting a notice of it in the next day. And apart from that, as I say, we've been working on the draft local plan that came to the executive. We've got probably quite a quiet executive, I say, next time. There's not a great deal on, but one of the issues that will be coming to a future executive, which always causes a bit of comment, I think you could say, is car parking and car parking charges. That will be coming to the executive in July, I think that might be coming. Okay. So that will be Paul's first executive, will it not?
Yes, I think it will.
No, June will be your first executive on Tuesday.
Right. Oh yes, of course.
Yes.
It is in the diary, honest.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, well thanks for that, Moira. Perhaps actually you mentioned the local plan there.
Yeah.
Can you just quickly just explain what that is for residents who might just be joining us and don't, because it's a really important document, isn't it?
Yes, it is very important because it sets out how the borough will deliver its planning policy, if you like, over the whole of the borough. And every council has to have a local plan. Now, we're supposed to set them out for about 20 years. Our last one was supposed to last us to 2026, I think it was. But the government is now saying that local plans have to be updated and refreshed every 5 years. Our last one was agreed in 2012. So we are due for a refresh and a re-look at how we set out the planning policy, which guides the decisions that the the Planning Applications Committee and Development Control take. So they take these decisions on planning applications, but the guidelines, if you like, the criteria for how they can take those decisions are set out in the local plan. And that is out for consultation at the moment. And we'll then, when we receive the consultations back, we will look at it again and see whether we take any of those on board, and then we send it to the planning inspectorate because it has to undergo an examination in public. So the final say on that local plan will be the planning inspector who actually takes the examination in public. It won't be the borough council.
No, and you have just posted actually before this live Q&A on your page details of the consultation.
Yeah.
I would urge, and I'm sure you would, residents to read that document and to have their say on it.
Yeah. If you don't read it and you don't have your say on it, then you may find that you will end up one day with something that you don't want and a development that you don't want. It really is important that you read it, particularly where it might apply to your area, and particularly if you're living near or in the greenbelt, because that is obviously an area that, as we know, is under huge pressure. We've seen what's happened in other areas, in Waverley, and we see the pressure that, for instance, Guildford Borough Council are under. Surrey Heath is going to be under the same pressure. Anybody with greenbelt is going to be.
Okay, lovely. So if you are just tuning into this now, this is a live Q&A with the leader of Surrey Heath Borough Council, Councillor Moira Gibson. This is your opportunity, if you're watching live, to ask any questions you want about anything going on in Surrey Heath. And Moira will be more than happy to answer any questions that you've got. If she can't answer them, then if you ask a question, she'll come back to her page and put a comment in later if you don't have the answer. Now, we have already had some questions in. People are joining us live and asking questions as well. We've got Katia Malkaus-Cooper in the background fielding questions for us, because like every male, typically I can't multitask.
You're not multitasker,
no.
okay.
So let's go to some of the questions that we've received first. Let me just scroll down to my WhatsApp here. Okay. The first question is, there was an article on Get Surrey about the local plan indicating Surrey Heath is to take more sites where sites in the settlement area are not possible. They could be placed in the green belt. This is rather alarming. Can you please offer an explanation? And I've had a lot of comments about that too.
Yeah, well, in the draft local plan, we are under an obligation to do what is called a call for sites. And when we get the response to that, and they mostly do come from developers, I have to say, or owners of pieces of land, then we have to look at those sites and look at whether they would be suitable or not for development sites. Now, I think what Surrey Heath is saying is that we actually are going to defend the greenbelt, and we don't believe that there's a need to review our greenbelt. Having said that, that doesn't stop property developers putting their land in, or owners putting their land in, and asking the inspector to look at it and to look at whether those sites should actually be put forward. And I suppose the real problem for Surrey Heath is that we're about 700 houses short of our allocation, even under the draft local plan. And what we're saying is that we're in what is called a housing area. We're in the housing area with Hart and Rushmore. And what we're saying is that we should be cooperating, and Hart and Rushmore should be cooperating with us, and that we would see them taking some of that 700 shortfall, if not all of it. Now, I think you can imagine that probably they're not overjoyed by that, and probably neither their residents will be. So the danger for Surrey Heath and the danger for its greenbelt, and it's not the council putting it forward because we will be defending the greenbelt, but the danger is that a property developer, an owner, Rushmore or Hart, could come to the inspector and say, well, Surrey Heath wants us to take their houses, or they're not letting us develop our sites, but actually they've got a shortfall, therefore, Mr. Inspector, you should actually be putting those sites forward. Now, we will be defending them robustly, but at the end of the day, as I indicated before, it is the inspector's decision, and there is real danger because of the pressure that we're all under to take more and more housing, especially in the southeast, that a site may come forward that we don't want to come forward. And unfortunately, the greenbelt is the area where most of the sites will be located that might be in danger. We shall be defending it robustly, as I've said before, but we can't stop what the inspector may do.
Can you just explain, for the benefit of people watching, that we as councillors in a planning committee, and large developments will be determined by the whole council, not just a planning committee?
No.
Right? So every councillor will get to vote on it.
Yeah.
And the thing is that even if every single councillor votes against it, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stop it. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, there are two sort of stages to any planning application, and most people have been involved in planning applications probably know this, but some may not realise it. The first stage is when the planning application comes into the council. It can be decided by the officers. There is a delegated power. Or there can then come a lot of other planning applications, and they tend to be more major planning applications, would come to the planning applications committee, or in the case of a very major application, for instance, I think I can remember the mosque that we had, and some development down at Sainsbury's in Watchmore actually came to a full council. And that full council will make the decision on whether that should be refused or allowed or approved. But that's not the end, because every applicant, and not an objector, and that's something that people sometimes find very hard to understand, an applicant is perfectly entitled and has the right to make an appeal to the planning inspectorate. An objector, or the people who want the application refused, do not have that same right. It's a right for the applicant only. They can apply to the appeal to the inspectorate, and then that is heard in another public, usually either a written inquiry, or for very big planning applications, a public inquiry, and that is heard by an inspector. He takes a decision on, and he decides what he feels about it, and he can overturn a council's refusal, and has done in my own ward of Heath Park Wood. We actually refused that, but the inspector overturned it and allowed the appeal. So he can overturn it. In some very limited circumstances, it could go to the Secretary of State, but he very rarely acts against his inspector's recommendation.
Okay. Right, lovely. Thanks for that, Moira. Now, we've got lots of people watching live now, which is absolutely fantastic. Robin James, I have seen your question and I will read it out, I promise. But we're going to go to Claire Chesney's comment rather than a question, I think. Please can we see lots more of Be Like Keith in the Bag It and Bin It campaign? His face sells the message well, and then the post can be shared successfully. Well, you're talking to the right person, Claire, because
Yes.
Moira is a dog lover.
I'm a dog lover, and I did have a Labrador. He was yellow though. So yeah, if everybody liked Keith, I'm quite happy, and it has a serious sort of message behind it. And Keith, as you all realise, and his owner are very responsible dog owners, and I think that's the message we want to get out: be a responsible dog owner, because if you're not, you spoil it for everybody else. And I have my sister, who is a very responsible dog owner. She actually carries bags round with her, and if she sees somebody not picking up their dog mess after them, she can be very robust with them. So yeah, hello Keith, if you're looking, and you know, keep on the good work.
Your sister's not only a responsible dog owner, she was, or is she still the Secretary General of the Kennel Club?
Well, she's the Executive Director of Cruft's Dog Show,
right.
So she is very, very, very into dogs, I should say.
Yes, I've met your sister,
yes,
and it was good to chat with her.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is as well, of course, you mentioned your sister giving out the dog bags, but the council have launched Ticks Pack. Just explain what that is, please.
Yeah, it's a sort of way in which we can actually help people pick up their dog mess and encourage them to do so. And I think Councillor Mrs Chapman knows a lot more about it than I do. And she, I think, was down in Frimley Lodge Park with Keith as well.
And me.
And Paul.
Yes.
And it's a campaign that we've launched. It's not the entire answer, I don't think. No. I think there is a hard core that we are actually working on as to how we tackle them. Because there are some people who just will not do it, no matter what message is given out there, and no matter how antisocial their behaviour is appearing. And so it's a useful tool forward, but there are other tools that we may be using in the future to try and make people aware of what they're actually doing and how antisocial it is. It's not just, you know, it's not just bad behaviour by people, or littering the streets, or being unruly that is antisocial. It can be many things, and that is one of them. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, I'm just going to answer James Burton's question. Hello, James. He asks about an update on the proposal of Dunsfold Park housing, and actually that's not our area, James. That's a different area altogether. But I know you well, James, so I'll get an update on that for you.
Yeah, it is actually in Waverley, but it is quite. It would be interesting to know what the update is, because I think that's still with the Secretary of State, and I'm not sure whether he's actually made a decision yet.
He has on Wisley.
Yeah, he has on Wisley. I'm not sure. But interestingly, the local plan inspector for Waverley, because they've had their local plan inspection about 6 months ago. He actually supported Dunsfold Aerodrome, and he said that if it was his decision, he would put it forward. So it probably could have implications for lots of areas in Surrey Heath in the future.
Right, okay. I think that all development all around is will have an impact on us, not just here. The number one we get on any development is highways. Yes. That's the number one. It's the number one objection every single time. The traffic, and the impact that it has on people's commutes and so on. So even if it is in Waverley or if it's in Guildford, no matter where it is, it's going to impact Heath residents in one way or another.
Certainly if it's in Guildford, it will impact us, for instance, and Woking as well will impact us.
Absolutely. So, we've done Claire Chesney. Okay, Robin James wants to know, what can you do? We just mentioned traffic. What can you do about the traffic build-up every day at the M3 roundabout, Lightwater, approaching M3 from Lightwater?
I would love to be able to do something about it, Robin, but I realistically, I'm not sure that there's anything we can do. And to be fair, I'm not sure that there's an awful lot that the Surrey County Council can do. I mean, I travel that roundabout most days, and yeah, it is bad. You could always say, well, should you take the traffic lights away? I think that will, because often people say, and I've heard it said about the meadows down in Camberley as well, the traffic lights actually cause more problems than they actually solve. Now, you know, whether that would be something that that the county might like to consider in the future, I don't know. I'm not convinced. I think that those traffic lights actually do work quite well. But part of the problem is the queuing on the slip roads to get on or off of the motorway. And that isn't anything to do with the borough or even the county, actually. It's the Highways Agency. And they are the people who are responsible for any of the works on the M3. So it's their decision about whether they can approve the entrance and exits onto that motorway. But I think realistically, the traffic is just so great that we're not going to be able to make much of a difference no matter who we are.
No, there is some, though, relief in so much as the deep cut development. There is some traffic mitigation there and widening of junctions like at the Gordon Boys roundabout and approaches to the M3 from deep cut and Red Road. So that might alleviate it a little bit. It
might help it a bit. And, you know, we're still promoting, because when the Longcross site or the Derra site, whichever you want to call it, we very strongly said we accept we're not going to get an extra full junction on the M3 because it's too close, but we had some talks which indicated that it was worthwhile our putting forward a proposal for a restricted junction onto the Longcross site. And although that's Runnymede planning application and Runnymede planning development, we are still consulted as the next door borough. And in the latest consultation, I think we have actually said, no, we want that possibility kept in. Even if it may never come about, I think it's important we keep that possibility in.
Okay, great. Okay, now I'm going to ask a question from Hannah Louise. Now, I had a long telephone conversation with Hannah today, and I did mention this to you before we went live. You know, she was very upset about something she'd witnessed at the House of Fraser today, but that's actually not her question. Interesting. Maybe there'll be a follow-up question from Hannah. But she's basically put, I'm a resident of Camberley, and I can't help but notice that Camberley is becoming a slight concrete jungle. A few examples: derelict areas, Alders, the Cambridge Hotel, Camberley Working Men's Club. Previously, Camberley used to be a vibrant, busy place where people enjoyed being. It feels like there is a space that can be utilised effectively, but is currently vacant. It's a shame because people who enjoy socialising and shopping could consider other areas other than Camberley that feel more appealing.
Yeah, and I think that's something that council probably agrees, that we want to make sure that Camberley is vibrant and that people come to it in the long term. But with all plans, there will be a hiatus when everything seems that nothing's happening and we're not doing anything. But we have actually now got in place plans to revitalise the high street and to to refurbish it, put some public realm into the high street. You should be seeing that starting at the end of the year. We are, as you know, refurbishing our shopping centre. Interestingly, I just walked past there today and I've noticed that they've put all the scaffolding up around the Working Men's Club, and that will be residential. Now, it may not be what everybody wants, but I think it will be an improvement. It will look better. It will give a better feel and a better look to that entrance into the shopping centre. And of course, as you know, we have our aspirations for the London Road block, which are still on our timetable. Again, you're not going to see that starting tomorrow, because big schemes like that, and we are talking about something between 300 to 500 million for that scheme, do not get off the ground yesterday or even today or even tomorrow. It is a long-term scheme. But when that's all in place, and with other sort of options that we're using and other people that we're trying to bring into Camberley, I think you will begin to see a gradual and then hopefully a quicker step change in Camberley.
Right, okay, good enough. What we got here? Okay, Chobham Parish News Facebook page. Or is it the Chobham Society? I don't know. Or is there a difference? I'm not sure. Seem very anti-Tory. They certainly do. I would like to hear what local Tories have achieved. Is there a more balanced community page where we can hear more about what everyone else has done?
Well, I think obviously, you know, we have to accept that you're not going to hear it necessarily from borough councillors at the moment, because the borough councillors for Chobham are not Conservatives, and I think we've just got to be honest about that. Mike Goodman, however, I think he has a Facebook. He is the Conservative County Councillor, and I know Mike is very active in Chobham. I think he took part in a question and answer session down in Chobham a couple of weeks ago, maybe a bit longer than that, with Michael Gove. And I think he is very proactive. He's on to me practically every day asking what's happening here and what can I say.
One of the hardest working councillors I know, actually.
He is one of the hardest working councillors.
Yeah.
I'm sure he has a Facebook page.
He does.
And I'm sure he will be putting on it a more balanced view of what's actually happening in Chobham. And yes, that is something I think as Conservatives that we need to address, about how we actually let Chobham feel that they are as well served by the borough as other areas are, because, you know, I accept that they probably don't at the moment, and I think that's something that we need to work on. But please go on to Mike's Facebook page. You'll get a very balanced view from Mike, and if you've got any problems in Chobham, even borough problems sometimes, because he's always on to me about borough problems and asking what we're doing, just contact Mike or contact me, because you know, one day Windlesham and Chobham will be a joint ward.
Not long from now.
Not long from now.
Absolutely. And one thing I would like to say as well is that Moira now has a Facebook page, which you're watching live now, this Facebook Live. But let's be clear, not everybody is good at everything.
No.
And social media is new to Moira, and I'm helping her with that. So do bear with her, but if you have any questions, do put them on through her Facebook page. If you don't want to do it in a public comment, send a direct message and Moira will answer you.
Yeah.
But she is getting her head around this social media business, so do bear with her. But her page will also be somewhere that Chobham residents can...
Yeah, it's a page for everybody. It's not just a page for Windlesham or just a page for the town. It's a page for everybody who lives in Surrey Heath Borough Council. Yeah. And yes, I'm trying very hard. I've just had a lesson before this
we
question.
Spent an hour.
We spent an hour having a lesson, and I did have to say to Paul, look, Paul, if I really get stuck, I'll have to WhatsApp you.
Yes, absolutely, and I don't have a problem with that at all. But yeah, do bear with Moira, and you know, we all know, with anyone who's been on Facebook, takes a little bit of time getting used to. And I know Moira will. And one thing I've always admired about you, Moira, is that you're never afraid to answer difficult questions. No. So some of us might wince a little bit in some of the questions that we get. You never do, and you're quite happy to answer anything, which is great. So let's have a look at the next question. Actually, I live in the area of north of Snows Ride in Windlesham. Yeah. This is your area, yes, Moira. I have now been moved to Bagshot. Yeah. What will happen to us? Who will look after us? I want to vote for things in my village, not Bagshot.
I know it is really very, very sad with this the local government, and parliamentary is another matter, which is even worse for Windlesham. But the local government boundary review is not what we wanted. It's not what we put forward. But they've made their decisions, and we have to abide by the decision. We don't have the power to change it ourselves. No. And they've more or less divided Windlesham up. One part going to a joint ward with Chobham, and another part, which is the part that this lady is or gentleman, I don't know which, is referring to, going into a joint ward with Bagshot. And it's very sad, because you've divided a village up. And I absolutely understand what the person who posed this question is feeling. And all I can say is that you will still be represented by borough councillors. They may not be Windlesham or live in Windlesham, but they will still represent you. I don't know who's going to be there at the after the next election, but if they are the same people that are there at the moment, they are very good borough councillors. They will represent you as much as possible. And you know, at the end of the day, if you really want to contact another borough councillor who lives in Windlesham, I'm sure they're not going to have too much objection to that.
No, absolutely not. Now let's have a look what else we've got here. Okay, quite topical one at the moment, and one that's definitely affecting residents in the ward that I represent, and Deach, and that's missed bin collections. Yeah. Big topic at the minute. There seems to be problems with the new contractor with bins missed in Heatherside yesterday and Lightwater today. When will the council sort it out so that we can have a dependable service? I think
Yeah.
that's a very good question.
Yeah. Well, obviously the council are working very closely on a continuous basis with the contractor, Amy, through what is called Joint Waste Solutions, which is the consortium set up by the 4 areas involved. We always knew there would be problems, and our experience in both Woking and Elmbridge indicated that the problems would not be quickly solved. Part of the problem, I think, is that the mist collections happen when there's a vehicle that is not in service, or when somebody doesn't turn up for work, and I think that's a resource issue. Now, I think that's the conversation we are having at the moment with the contractor about the fact that we need to see better resources put in and a better reliability to the service. I think we put up with sort of teething difficulties, and I think now is the time to have a fairly robust conversation, which I know is happening at the moment. And I've also talked with the portfolio holder for it, Vivian Chapman, and I think we will be bringing a report to the executive after 6 months so that we can get a feel about how things are actually what is actually happening, and get some feeling for the data as well. But we're not ignoring it. We're not saying, oh, well, it's a new contract, therefore we shouldn't be doing anything. We are having some fairly robust conversations with them, and what we want to see, as much as anybody who lives in the borough, because after all, we all live in the borough as well, is to see that service improve. Absolutely. And that's what we will be working for. Yeah,
and I think that it is safe to say that this is occurring right across the borough.
Yeah, it is occurring across the borough, but not necessarily all at the same time. No. There are different areas that might be affected. I have to say, my road hasn't. Well, my bin collection hasn't been affected at the moment, but it always could be. So I think it is quite random sometimes about where it is actually happening.
Okay, but you are assured, residents, that it is being looked at very seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, now question here from Steve Miles. Now, not really a borough council responsibility, but I'm sure Moira will be able to point you in the right direction. So, when roads are subject to intrusive work such as installation of services, the roads don't seem to be reinstated properly. I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Soon after the reinstatement is undertaken, significant amounts of defects become apparent. How can you put the onus on contractors to be liable for these works and get them back to repair them properly in a timely manner?
Well, yeah, it's not the borough's responsibility, but I'm sure I can point you in the right direction. That actually probably is Surrey County Council's responsibility. In their defence, I have to say that often the contractors, particularly if we're talking about utilities, don't have to tell the county when they're going to do any work. Now, most of them do, but they don't have to. And we've had issues sometimes, I think, when they were doing all the works down the A30 near Bagshot, that they didn't actually tell the county when they were going to start the works or how they were going to carry out the works. But I think, you know, it is paramount, and it is the county's responsibility to monitor those works, and if they're done in a shoddy fashion, or if they put the road back in a pretty shoddy fashion, then I think it's right for all of us to expect the county to say to them, actually, you've got to come back and make good. And I would hope that, and Paul, you would probably know more than I would, being a county councillor, I would hope that that's actually what the county is doing.
Yeah, they are. It is very difficult because, you know, they lay a new road, the county council spending all this money on doing resurfacing. It's happening in Deach right now.
Yeah.
Beautiful new road, and then the contractor guarantees it for 10 years.
Yep.
And then one of the utility companies
come along and digs it up again.
Digs it up and voids the guarantee, and it's just a continual cycle of this, and it is exceptionally challenging. But the best person to speak to about this, the person who asked this question, is actually to go to Colin Kemp's Facebook page. Colin is very active on Facebook. He's the cabinet member for highways at Surrey County Council. and he would be delighted to answer any of your questions. And I happen to know, because I've spoken to Colin, that we're going to do a Facebook Live, me and Colin, Q&A on just on highways. Yeah.
So when that happens, I'm sure you'll be telling us all when it's going to happen.
Fact,
so we can tune
I should
in.
charge for tickets for that. I think it'll have a big audience. Excellent. So what else have I got here? Just bear with me if you're watching this live, because I'm getting questions coming in from all over the place. So sorry. Nice comment from Victoria Stead. Thanks for that, Vicky, but I think you are a bit biased as that we're friends. John Maturin says, how often do you test the air quality in Camberley and surrounding areas? Are you rolling out any initiatives to have cleaner air with such high traffic around these days? Good question.
Yeah, well, we do carry out regular air quality monitoring from the environmental health team, and we have regular monitoring sort of posts, if you like. Recently, the one area where it was shown that the air quality measurements were higher than was acceptable was down the A331, the Blackwater Valley Relief Road, and we are, 3 of councils, Guildford, Rushmore and ourselves, are now carrying out a study to look into that further and to see what may be the cause of that, although I think we probably all know what the cause is, which is too many cars and too much traffic. But that's not an easy thing for us to solve, and I don't actually think it's anything that the borough will be able to solve on its own. I do think that's a national problem, and since our MP is Minister of State for DEFRA, I think that's a problem that we hope that he will be dealing with, and I know he's quite keen to deal with it.
Yeah, and I know that it's also because Mike Goodman is also
Goodman,
Environment Cabinet member.
and Mike has got some very strong views about it.
He does.
And I think he's hoping to introduce some air quality friendly buses. I'm not quite sure what their name is. I'm not sure I'm supposed to say what their name is anyway, but they are sort of environmentally friendly buses, and I know he's hoping to introduce some of those into Surrey Heath as well.
Yes. I do happen to know his wife Karen is watching this live right now.
Right.
Hello, Karen. David Chesney, an avid follower. I actually think he's one of your fans, Moira, because every live Q&A you do, whether it's with me or with Talk Surrey Heath, David, we get
lots
of questions
from
him.
David.
So thanks for taking part, David. It's really appreciated. So this is David's question. Was there any dry run with sample residents before launching local plan consultation to ensure that even less advantaged readers could understand it and respond to it? Even the first consultation question seems clumsy. Do you agree with the preferred approach to the vision and objectives? I understand a question like, do you agree with the vision and objectives, but isn't preferred approach to them being confusing jargon? Can you explain, please, what it means? I'll be honest, I haven't actually read it all yet. I don't know if you have.
I've read parts of it, but I have a feeling that some of the way that we express the questions, we're required to do it in that way, and so there may not be as much freedom to express it differently. And yes, I agree. It is planning speak, and it is difficult. We are committed to equality, so I think they will have the team will have actually made sure that all groups can be reached, because that is a part of our commitment to equality. But I'm not sure that we're going to ever be able to express it in such simplified terms that I can understand it and Paul can understand it. I think we are going to have to accept that it is planning speak, and that some of it is going to have to remain planning speak.
But there's no reason why, if you read something in there you don't understand. Contact your ward member.
Contact the ward member, or indeed contact a member of the planning policy team, who will probably be able to explain it to you probably a lot better than the ward members will be able to explain it to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now I'm just looking here because I've asked these questions. I'm so sorry. I'm doing what men can't do, and that's multitask. Yeah, there's another question about missed bin collections on the Heather side. We've already covered that. Let's talk about the House of Fraser.
Yeah. Okay. House of Fraser.
Because I have had some questions about that, but I just can't find them on my WhatsApp right now.
Okay.
About House of Fraser, as I said earlier, Hannah rang me today. Quite upset about something she'd witnessed and that there was an elderly resident who was very upset. but perhaps you could explain to residents
Yeah.
what the current position is.
The current position in the House of Fraser is, as you know, they are seeking what's called a Creditors Voluntary Agreement, CVA, which is a sort of step away. It's a way to try and keep the company going, and as part of that, they've had to look at overheads and they've had to look at closures. Now, Camberley was mentioned as one of the shops that would be closed. Camberley House of Fraser itself, on its own, actually performs very well. Is in one of the top performing House of Fraser stores in the country. It of course had to take its fair share of overheads from other areas, and you know that sometimes may affect how the performance has looked. But it's not all gloom and doom, because there are some stores that the House of Fraser board are still looking as to whether they will actually close them. One of those is Camberley. We are still talking to them, and we are still negotiating with the House of Fraser to see if there is a way to keep the Camberley store open. If that doesn't succeed, then the council has other options, which I probably can't say anything about at the moment, but the council has other options to make sure that whatever happens, something goes on at that store and it doesn't close, because the last thing that we would want to see is that boarded up. And I think there are some people who have criticised our buying the House of Fraser, but I think it's actually been proved that it was the right thing to do, because if we hadn't, believe me, we would have had no control over what happened to that store.
It'd be boarded up.
It would be boarded up without a second sort of thought. And the very fact that we do own the freehold and we do control it means that we are masters of our own fate. And we are very, very keen that whatever is there, we do not see that building, if you like, closed. But we're still very hopeful we may be able to come to a negotiated agreement with the House of Fraser. So it's not a complete fait accompli, but we will have to see what happens.
Okay, lovely. But it's nice, isn't it, that there is support for that in the community.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of questions.
I believe there's a petition been started, so if people want to see House of Fraser stay, please sign the petition.
I think it might be. I think they might be a bit late for that petition.
Well, not
I
necessarily.
think people need to vote with their feet and buy stuff in there. Really,
but they are, Paul. It is one of the better performing. You know, people have been using the House of Fraser, have been shopping there, which is why it's one of the best performing ones in their group.
Right.
The problem is that there are others that aren't.
No. Okay, that's great. Thanks for that. Now there's a question here on travellers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's have a look. There was an article in the local media regarding the local plan indicating that Surrey Heath is to take more gypsy sites, and where sites in the settlement area are not possible, they could be placed in the green belt. This is rather alarming. Can you please offer an explanation?
Yes, I think it's what I did sort of touch on it before, is that we are obliged to, and there's nothing we can do about that. We need to look at the gypsy and traveller need in the borough, and how we can provide for that need. And the way the gypsy and traveller need is sort of calculated is not about, well, we don't want any more, or we only want another couple of pitches. There is a formula that is followed, and that formula will produce a figure for every borough in the, well, certainly in the southeast, but in the country, as to how many new pitches you will need. Now we're obliged to put that forward, and if we didn't, the inspector would tell us that we had to, and he will be looking at that. What we are saying is what we're trying to do is to see whether we can meet some of that need by perhaps extending the existing sites that we have here, or finding a site which is the least controversial. And I know that's very difficult, because I know it's one of the most controversial subjects that you will ever come across. I know that myself. I was chairman of the regional planning committee when they did the Gypsy and Traveller South East plan, and it was probably one of the most difficult things that I've ever done. And I know it is very controversial, but we are obliged by law to look at it. Now, if we can't find any, it may be that the inspector will tell us where those sites will have to be. The Gypsy and Traveller community can come to that planning and public inquiry and actually put forward private sites. That's a preferred approach, apparently, is to have private sites rather than the traditionally managed council sites. if we still can't find any, there is always the risk, as we've seen in the past, that if we have a shortfall in our Gypsy and Traveller provision, then they can just put forward a site, and in the past the inspector has sometimes agreed, not agreed. We won the Swift Lane appeal, but I think there were quite some different circumstances there. We may not always win an appeal if we can't find the provision that we need. It's the same for housing. If we can't find the housing provision we need, then it's a bit of a free-for-all by developers, and I'm afraid it's the same for Gypsy and Travellers. We will try to do it in the least controversial way we can, but at the end of the day, the inspector will be looking for us to say how we're going to meet that need.
And doing nothing's not an option, because we could lose control of it altogether, and we could actually end up with a less favourable outcome than if we just dealt with it ourselves.
Yes, it's much better if we can deal with it in a managed way ourselves and involve the community in it, because as you say, otherwise we could lose control of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now thanks for that. Another question, which was also a lot of these questions, actually, it's interesting because which relates to the next question after this, is that we see this over and over again on social media.
Yeah.
So these questions, it's not something that we're not, and I have to say, I happen to know for a fact that Moira does monitor the local social media groups. She might not necessarily comment on them, but she certainly knows what's going on, because pretty much every time I say, did you know about that? she already knows. So, okay, so one is, the next question is, and we're getting short on time now. We were only going to do this for half an hour, but we said to an hour max, so and we're getting very close to that. I'm going to read out these next two questions, and then I think we'll call it a day. It's been very successful. A lot of people watching live and asking questions, which is great. So the next question is, why did you remove the trees on Park Street? Seems at odds with your public realm improvements announcements.
Yes, it did come as a bit of a surprise to us, because it was actually the atrium that removed them, and that's a discussion we will have with the atrium, and I don't want to sort of criticise anybody on this.
They had good reasons.
They had good reasons. Certainly the concrete, some of the trees weren't as healthy as they looked, and certainly the concrete planters, because we were hoping to actually move some of the concrete planters elsewhere in the borough, but most of them just crumbled as soon as you tried to move them. And yes, it does look a bit bare at the moment. It does look a bit uninteresting, but we have got plans, some on a temporary basis hopefully, but long-term plans to actually refurbish and refresh Park Street, because I thought it was quite interesting. I saw a comment, I can't remember which site it was on, about, well, why don't you put something in that lasts for 10 years? Why didn't the council do that? Well, actually, that was for 10 years. I think people forget the atrium has been open since 2007, so they were probably reaching a bit of the end of their life. And when I walked down there, I thought they were looking just a bit tired, and I think it's time that we actually refurbished and refreshed that. So there will be replacements going in for the street furniture there, and we hope that they will make the whole place become a lot more vibrant again, although it is quite vibrant at the moment.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you for that. Okay, another question which is quite interesting, because Alan McClafferty always laughs there. He always says to me, oh, I wonder how long it'll be before Deach says a sentence without saying social media, right, in it. And there's been a question here about social media, which is, why are there not more councillors on social media? Right. It is always the same few, and they deal with a lot of stuff. Feels like the rest are not engaging with people.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone, is it?
It is not for everyone, and I can think of some councillors who I find it quite exciting, actually. I may get a lot of things wrong, but I actually find it quite exciting to think about what I can do with it. And to make it a sort of two-way conversation. But there are some councillors who feel deeply unhappy, just as there are some people who never stop complaining about social media. I know quite a few who think it's the most awful thing that's ever been invented. And there are some councillors like that. That doesn't mean they're not engaged with their community. Many of them are very, very good local councillors who've been known their community and been involved in their community for an awfully long time. and who just do not actually want to engage with social media. But there are a number who are actually either on Facebook or on other forms of social media, and there are a number. I think you've just mentioned Councillor McClafferty, so I believe he's actually going to start trying to work up his Facebook page.
Oh, is it? Oh, right.
So
News to me.
but well, I think he's getting Katia to help him.
Right. Good.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, she won't guide.
So I think there are a number of councillors like Paul and like Katia who are actually trying to help those who want to, but we are all volunteers, and you are not in an organisation where you can force people to go onto any form of social media if they don't want to. But we are trying to encourage, and we've got a number of people who are trying to help them do it. Who's helping me.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are councillors who do stuff that I don't want to do.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be forcing people to do it if they don't want to do it.
No.
And like you say, there are plenty of councillors out there that work very, very hard that are not on social media.
Not on social media.
And if they don't want to be, that's entirely up to them. Excellent. Now we're going to actually. There is one more question that's come in, and I'm just going to field that to you, and then we'll call it a day. So it's from Barry Stacey.
All right.
There is no major signage for Camberley on the M3. There is for Farnborough, Bracknell, Woking. This may contribute to the fact that the town is anonymous and a vibrant shopping venue and a place to go. This will add to its demise, in my opinion. Surely an opportunity was missed when Highways England built the smart motorway and renewed the signs.
No, we actually made quite a lot of had a lot of discussion with Highways England about putting a sign in, but they were quite obdurate about it and they wouldn't do it. And as I'd mentioned with the M3 before, and I don't know why, they never gave us a particular reason. They just said it was signposted the other way, so that was sufficient. But what we're trying to do is to encourage people to come to Camberley, but not everybody's going to come to Camberley via the M3. And what I think we're trying to do is to give Camberley a name, probably on social media actually, and you can actually come down the A30 and you can get into Camberley more easily down the A30, and it's not always chock-a-block. It tends to be at peak hours, but not always. And we're encouraging people to come to Camberley because I think you'll find that it's a really nice place to come to, and it will be getting better and better as some of our schemes that are in our thoughts and some of our schemes are actually being progressed. But we did try to get a Camberley sign on that particular part of that, going that direction on the M3, but we couldn't persuade Highways England. And as I said, they're the ones who make the decisions on what happens on motorways. Yeah,
as with many things that we're involved with or want to happen, there are some that are completely out of our control because there are 3 tiers of government.
Yeah.
You've got the local government, borough, districts, and then county council, and there's parish councils as well. Katia will shout at me for not saying parish council.
Oh, she will indeed, because she's chairman now. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But also the national government, and there are certain different types of the tiers of the government that control different things, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it.
No.
Well, lovely. Well, thank you so much, Moira. Another successful live Q&A. We're going to do more of these. Because it's clear there's an appetite for it in the community, and we'll announce that on your Facebook page soon. So thank you again for taking part. Thank you to all residents who have tuned in and asked questions. It's really great, and keep your eyes peeled on Moira's page for further similar live Q&A. So thank you very much.